Yeah.
All right,
That's
yeah.
close enough?
Turn
I think
that
it's
camera
close
on
enough.
now. Okay.
Let's call this January 17th TV Scott Free Library Board of Trustees meeting to order. Do you have any correspondence you'd like to share with us this
Yeah,
afternoon?
we got a thank you for the incredible dedication of the staff here from Jill Underly, the Wisconsin DPI superintendent. Title, of course.
Personal now.
Yes, personal.
You'll appreciate it
And then
greatly.
from the fire department, so we participated again in the Tree of Hope contributions, our funding that we do with our Friday Blue Jean Days.
Thank you. Any public comment? Doesn't look like it. Your pleasure on the minutes for the regular meeting of December 20th.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes from our December 20th meeting. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are approved. Your pleasure on the unaudited monthly review and expense report for December.
Are we open to discuss before making a motion?
You gotta make a
Then I
motion
will
first.
make a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
To put on, oh, okay, second.
Any discussion?
There we go.
Yes, thank you. Wow, are we like $15,000 to the good in our budget for the end of the year? I look at that number and I'm looking at 487,202, and it looks like our revenues are actually 502.
We were, I mean, we.
On
we
that
do-
date.
On that date, when the report was run.
Okay,
But the final report will show 0, and we did not get that yet.
well, okay,
So-
and does this final report show 0 because all of a sudden there was something in maintenance that cost us 627% of what we estimated? So we budgeted 2,500 for maintenance, repairs, contingency, and we spent 15,694?
That was part of that was the security system.
Got it, brilliant. So we don't have to budget for a new
Yeah.
security system next year? Or
No,
we
well,
just don't have
we-
to spend?
We do, well, we do and we don't know, and that's coming up, so.
Okay, because that amount is almost exactly
Yeah.
evens out when you
Yeah,
look at
close.
that weirdness.
Yep.
Okay, cool, so,
Okay.
but we're still solvent.
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are approved. Here's discussion on a monthly statistical report.
Well, at least
Pluses.
all the youth numbers went up.
Yeah.
Good job. Right.
You don't need a motion on that one, right?
For this one,
Yeah. You want a motion on it?
I have in the past.
You have?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to put on file.
Motion made and seconded to approve our statistical report from December. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. All right, action item. Endowment fund for the fire alarm adjustment.
Yeah, so that's where we're asking for some funding from the endowment fund for an additional amount of $4,535 because the state required that we add some extra things to the building to make it up to code. And so that wasn't part of the budgeted amount. So we're requesting, Nick was requesting that to cover the cost from the endowment
And
fund.
the city contributed to 35.
Yep.
So what's your pleasure on that?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Yeah. Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the request for $4,535. Is any other discussion?
I think it's just noteworthy that the city is coughing up 35,000. This brings us up to code. I think it's an absolute no-brainer.
Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? It is approved. Request to dissolve the book fund account into the endowment fund. Well, let's, got my name here,
That's
but
all
Richard.
sort of combined with C, which
Okay,
is the next item.
all right.
I'll try to explain it so somebody can understand it.
Okay.
Are you looking at me when you said that?
No, I just send a couple that way. A few extra. Oh, yeah, I gave you my original copy. I'll trade you. I can tell by the,
Oh, there's an extra one here if anybody needs one that way.
Well,
Good. You get
Sure.
one?
thanks.
okay, I've made a lot of changes this year, so if you have any questions as I'm going through this, just interrupt me and I'll confuse you more.
The bottom line is, we got the same amount in the dollars and are still the same on the
The
bottom,
dollars
right?
are all the same, but I eliminated.
That's the important part.
I eliminated 3 accounts.
That's the important
And it's
part.
gonna make it much easier for my, whoever takes over.
Predecessor.
Okay, page 1, our assets went up from 568,000 to 610, and we invested the money wisely. Well, we could have done better, but we got 4.85% on the first one, and I think 5% on the second one. The CD with Edward Jones and the CD with the Incredible Bank. Now those rates are up to about 5.47 or something like that, so they're coming up for renewal soon, and maybe we'll be able to get a little better rate yet before the Fed starts pushing the rates down. Gives us that 610,000. We got 71,000 in the bank that we can access immediately without any penalties. So unless we come up with a really, really big project, we shouldn't have any problem. So the 610,000 is now made up of 3 funds. The endowment fund of 446,000, the special project fund of 163,000, and the Zander bequest, the unspent money from last year of $1,400. So we just about used up all the Zander money, but not quite. Anyway, next page. We took in 98,000. It was the money, the income that the Zander bequest made was 41,000, and then we took in 36,000 of special projects. The biggest part of that was some money from, what's the big equipment company down in
Sweeters.
Rothschild?
Rod? No.
No,
Green Hack?
Greenhack.
Greenneck,
Yeah,
right,
Greenhack.
Greenhack,
Is that-
the,
for Ron.
in memory of Ron Nichols.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, yeah,
My memory is not great, but I think it was 25,000.
I think so.
so,
Yeah,
top of my head.
yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds about right. 11,000 of other miscellaneous.
Mhm.
So our total taken in last year, well, you also see that the interest income did start jumping because we did get part year at the higher rates. So that number will jump to probably $20,000 next year. Special projects and other are 56,000. The 2 sheets at the back, which aren't part of the report, show exactly what we spent it on, and I'll go over that later. So took in 98, spent 56. We had an excess of 42,000. That added to our beginning balance of 568,000. Brings us to the 610,000 you saw on page 1.
Just kind of a point here, Richard, that on the Zander bequest, in January, we usually get a transfer, right?
Yeah,
And it'll be similar this year.
yeah. I haven't really looked at it. I think it maybe popped up a few dollars.
I
but
think
not
it's
a lot.
46.
Yeah. One of our investments went south on us and isn't paying anything right now, but those are the things that Jane invested in, and I pretty much left them alone. Okay, next page, endowment fund. That shows how we started with 199,000. I eliminated the Vanslo bequest by merging it into the endowment fund. I don't think there's any heirs left around for Mr. Vanslo that will complain that he doesn't get his name in this anymore. We talked about it before, but I also eliminated the book fund. There haven't been any donations to that in 20 years. I think it was a big thing in the 40s and 50s that people would come in and donate money. Now, with books costing $50 each, the interest hardly pays to buy 1 or 2 books every year. So I don't think we'll miss that one. Then the donations to the endowment fund were $4,200. We earned interest of $12,000, and now I'm keeping the books on the actual value of the endowment fund instead of the original cost, because I think that makes a lot more sense. You'll see, last year we had a horrible year, and our investments dropped $13,000. This year we made back $4,200 of it. Until interest rates start dropping again, we probably won't get that money back in the near future. But it's the hazards of investing in fixed investments when the interest rates go from 0.5% to 5%. Anyway, the next one is the Memorial Book Fund. You'll see that I eliminated it. $19,179 went up into the endowment fund. The Zander bequest, we just about spent all that, or transferred it into the special project fund, so there's only $1,400 left. And my intention, and hopefully whoever replaces me, is we spend the Zander bequest. We spend the endowment fund first, and the Zander bequest next, and then the endowment fund last. I'll get to that, how much is available in a minute. Actually, eliminated the Walden Tockley Fund last year. Special Project Fund, we just showed you the money transferred in and the donations, so it's gotten $163,000. Vansville bequest is eliminated. You see it was transferred up into the endowment fund. And the basement project, I don't know what to think of that. People donated probably over $50,000 to eliminating this pole, and then we found out it was going to cost much more than that.
Right.
And only one of the donors wanted the money back.
Mhm.
And so we still got $25,000, and I don't see any reason to keep it separate. I just plugged it into the endowment fund and eliminated it. So, if anybody asks about the basement project, whatever happened to that, we just put it in the endowment fund. Last page. This is the endowment fund. As you can see, we started with 201,000. We transferred in Vansville. We transferred in the book fund. We had receipts of interest of 4,200, which got the original balance of 427, or the balance from last year to this year, getting us to 427. Of that, 18,000 is interest, which we can spend on the endowment fund, the interest portion. And that gets us to the 446,000, which you also saw on page 1. Next page. It's not part of the report. It just shows the blow-by-blow description of what we spent money on last year. Kevin and I kind of got out of sync, and he paid the graphic house bill, and then I reimbursed him, and then it was a mess with the city, but I think we got it all straightened out. The rest of them are pretty self-explanatory, I think. If you got any questions, ask Lori what the money was for. But, we spent $32,000 in the first 6 months of the year, and the next page is the money we spent in the second 2 months of the year. You see my bill is in there. That doesn't go to me, that goes to Brian, who now owns Richard A. Mamer CPAFC, and I had him do the reports for me last year. I'm getting old and forgetful. Anyway, I think all the rest of them should be fairly self-explanatory. The MSR design was the biggest part of the
Right. Space
the
and
expenditures, about $11,000. Anyway,
Well, first of all, we'll entertain a motion to accept his report.
I got one other.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The money that's available that isn't encumbered by, in the endowment fund, which we can't spend the principal on, is $1,400 in the Zander fund, $163,000 in the special fund, and $1,800 in the endowment fund, $18,000. Leaves us with money we can spend of $182,830, which unless you got a really, really big project, I think would cover about anything. And I guess once we find out what we're talking about with the reorganization here, we might have enough to, with some help from the city. I don't know. Anyway, that's it.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Second. Is any discussion other than thank you, Richard? No.
And doesn't anybody want my
Will this motion include the request to dissolve the
there.
dissolve the book fund into the endowment fund and like we just did?
It's done.
Sure.
Yeah, but I mean, that
Yes,
motion included,
yeah,
okay.
that will, yeah, by
To
accepting
officially
that.
do it, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you need to include that some way other than
Yep.
that, whatever.
Yep.
Anyway, any other discussion? This gets too complicated, I just always got a right hand here, you know? She'll cover me for it. Cover-
And I missed, who was the second on that? My
Katie.
apologies. So, Katie, that's what I thought, okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And it's approved, thank you, Richard, again. Next one, MRS Design Youth Centers renovation project.
Just an update, right now, Nick is working, he's trying to set up some time for us to meet with MSR Design and the person that's going to give us the estimate. So that's still, it's in the process. Just want to give you an update.
Okay, about a discussion on the long-range plan, which, the survey report.
Any questions? It was an extremely long process. I learned a great deal about how to write questions and how not to write them. So this is my first time around with preparing the survey. Had a lot of help from both Erica and Art. And Erica helped me out with the report itself at the end, so.
Couple of comments.
Yes.
If I may. So, first of all, although there is a lot to be learned here, there's a lot of really interesting stuff.
Mhm.
Of course, the biggest challenge to working with this report is that, you don't want to fall prey to confirmation bias, right?
Right.
Everybody who responded here really is a regular library user.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't tell us about things like community needs outside the library patron population, but there are still some nuggets, I think some worthwhile things to note anyway. I'm somewhere around page 34. Library services that are most important to people. Not really a surprise that checking things out is kind of the overwhelming POW, right? The interesting thing was to see what's sort of in the middle of the pack. If this were a bell curve, what would be sort of the center and the most frequent? You get down, you got pretty steady usage until you get down to meeting rooms, which meeting rooms, reading advice, actually fall behind local history and genealogy, which is kind of fascinating. Again, this is our current user population.
Yep.
Really interesting that people are interested in programming for youth, and that's been really well attended, and programming for adults, which we push our staff to do a lot, and it is very labor intensive. Notice that even in a population that is getting significantly older rapidly, nobody's interested in senior citizen programming, which as somebody who's headed to being a senior citizen, I mean, again, it's just our current user base.
Right, and that is one of the things that I learned in the process.
Well, one of the
Yeah.
questions that I had as a result of that was how this survey incorporated the outreach department and the people who are regular library users but don't come to the library. Is that built in here, or does Donna do a separate sort of outreach survey? Or what? How does that factor in? Because
So that was
it's a
not-
surprising number.
Yeah, no, I know, and so that was not, so that is something that I learned
Okay.
from the process.
Okay.
That we need to make sure that those populations where we would serve outside of the library targeted, not necessarily targeted, but I need
But
to
they
make
would hear their
sure
voices.
that they,
Right.
that we should have taken those surveys to them.
Right.
And so that is one thing I learned in the process, so the next time around, that would be something that I would look at. I would look at the groups that we service inside and outside of the library and make certain that we reach them in some format.
Okay.
Either by, having Donna take those surveys to those facilities, and that they complete them, or if it's businesses in town that we see the participation more greatly,
Right.
making sure that we,
It might be worth, I mean, some of these things, they're obviously are not going to apply to them. If you hold the people in Jenny Towers to story hour attendance, obviously
Yeah.
it's going to skew the
Right.
number away from story hour. So it might have to be a slightly different survey for patrons who are regular users but not in, on premise. But I still think that there is value in that, because otherwise you look at a number like that and think, oh, they don't want any programming? We can can it, right? Yeah.
and we know that's not the case. I mean,
Right, and so that was one thing that sort of, that I wondered about. The other thing really kind of fascinating, it's a good thing we didn't see this a couple of months ago, because if we based our decisions on this, we would probably not have replaced the sign out front of the library, which like 4% of the population says they get any information from it at all. That's okay. You know
Yeah.
what? Time and temperature are still important. The
My
real,
problem with those electronic signs is there's pretty good maintenance on them, right?
yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah,
They used
Like,
to
it
be,
can
I
be.
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is it still,
yeah.
is it still, I mean, maybe with LEDs or something, it's less expensive, but I know when they first came out with those, man,
yeah, they're not as expensive as they used to be, but the maintenance would be, yes, if we were, yeah.
So I'm continuing on a particular theme though, and I'm going farther into, I think it's gonna be page, where was I? I was 34 before, so it's gonna be 37 now. And this is really kind of fascinating. Again, we're talking about our current patron base, all right? What do they think they need? Well, even though they tend to skew older, they really want programming for children, because that's an investment in the library's future, right? I'm never gonna attend story hour, and you're probably grateful. It's still a worthwhile investment in who's gonna use the library in the future. The fascinating thing on page 37 for me was to see that what people really wanted was mental health and wellness, and social connection, along with technological literacy, okay, or technology literacy. And the reason that's interesting to me is that you go and you look at those programs, right? We really invest a lot of time and money in adult programming, and I'm not sure that we actually have to work quite as hard. We could be doing something as simple as just saying, let's have a library patron social hour on Friday afternoons in the community room with tea and hot chocolate. Because it sort of seems like many of those people just want to be connected. And so I'm just thinking about how we allocate resources going forward. And maybe we're working too hard, and yet, by putting in, like, we bring in speakers and we bring in movies and we bring in programs, and it's great, it's wonderful. Maybe all we need is a coffee machine.
Well, the one thing that we found out is, so we had that Hugh, that reception, I think that, however.
Huya.
Hu-
Huya, the Danish thing, right?
Yeah, that
Huya.
thing. And we had a lot of people say that it was, and we had a lot of people, for our numbers, we had a lot of people attend, and it was a social gathering,
Yep.
someplace where they could just kind of unwind. We had tea and crumpets, tea and cookies, but, so it was just.
Exactly. It
was,
doesn't
yeah.
have to be like, oh, it's a book club and you have to read a book or you have to do this. I think that what they're telling us, at least the people who do use the library, is they're happy just to come in and hang out with each other. And we might want to try and exploit that. we might want to use that to their benefit.
And we've looked at more of the health and meditation and those types of things. We're starting to look in that direction already with some of the programming.
Even that
yeah.
though, Laura, I think might be working too hard. Like
Mhm.
literally, you know what? Have a social hour and have, assign a staff person to be the host for the social hour, and that counts as programming.
Mhm.
It's just, I know it sounds funny, but I'm very, very aware of how challenging it is to craft and produce adult programs. And the return, I'm not sure, is as great as we would like it to be. And I'm not sure we're,
The technology, though, I do have to say is some.
oh, that's
is a-
different. Yeah, they
in
need the
that-
technology, there's no
you know,
question.
And so and we see that as I mean, that we do use a lot of,
Oh, yeah. And people put that in there. They use the
Mhm.
Wi-Fi, they use the, they want some assistance with computers, things like that. That makes sense. But I'm just saying, you know what?
Mhm.
It might be a little more low-key than we think.
Mhm.
But,
That got to do with everybody working from home and missing the personal contact? that
well,
they
Could have
used to
been.
have?
it can be that. If you look at the demographics of our population, it's often a retired crowd. When I go upstairs to get a book or whatever, there are half a dozen people there that I know working at computers or whatever, and it takes forever to get the book because as you walk along, everybody stops you and catches up. And that happens they do that with each other, they do that with us, they do that with the staff. So, there's a space there that the library can fill with very, very little effort or investment. And I think that, like you say, get the coffee machine out, maybe spring for hot chocolate mix or whatever, have one staff person whose duty is to be the host and paid, like you're not volunteering it, this is part of your job. And that may be a perfectly good springboard for all sorts of other things that develop from it.
I've noticed a couple of churches have gone even to offer card parties like they did in the old days.
Right, and it's really just passing the time with people, so. Anyway, I loved the report, it was interesting.
Any other discussion?
The only thing that jumps out is the number of people that responded, 127.
Mhm.
Because with any kind of survey, before you get to that validity
Mhm.
side of things, especially within a community, you gotta get to around 10%
Yeah.
before you can really start.
Yeah. And we were at that 4 point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you can really start
Yep.
saying, okay, and I think you mentioned the worth noting part of that was the missing certain populations that you alluded to.
Yep.
So how can we
Mhm.
get information from the people that aren't walking through the door?
Right. Yep.
That would maybe bring them here
Mhm.
if they didn't know,
Mhm.
so.
Any other discussion? You need a motion to approve it or just?
No.
Okay.
Just discussion.
Alrighty, thank whoever, all the staff too that worked on it. How about our solar bond impact? That's a cute little
Yep, just some
thing here
information.
that, in fact, I even got it at home on the computer. I don't know what you guys. Give this one.
And we have people asking about that, so this is something that I will be posting out on our social media and putting it up on our website. And probably having it posted on each floor so that people just are aware, we have people ask, what good is that on our roof, that kind of thing. So that they understand there's some significance to that.
It was 239 barrels of oil, so. All right, thank you. Library Board Trustees recommendation?
Just some discussion because we have the two positions coming up in April. We have Katie. And Katie, were you looking to continue or what is your?
Well, I will unless you have somebody else who's more reliable and less at the mercy of untold number of uteruses. If you find somebody who could better and reliably fill the spot, I'm not gonna be offended.
Now, you're appointed by the county, right?
Correct.
Yeah, she's a county appointee. Yep. Okay. And
I
then,
feel
So that's an
hang
almost,
on,
that's an almost
trying
yes.
to
Yeah.
step back.
We don't
It's
just
almost,
the
yes.
serendipity of
Yeah, I know.
appearances.
Yeah, I know.
No,
yeah. Yeah, her term is up in April. And then Richard's is up in June. So we are actively looking for someone that would be interested in the board and be interested in some monetary, the financial aspect of things perhaps, so. And he is a city appointee. So, rack your brains.
We're lucky I can add.
I'm helping look at.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. Yeah.
Alrighty, strategic plan, goals number 1 through
Yeah,
5.
just our annual review of the whole thing. And we will continue to update this one until we have the next one in place, just so that you're aware of that. So, questions?
Anybody got any questions?
Okay.
Please,
All right.
give your report, please.
Now, the Wisconsin Trustee Essentials, managing the library's money. Doing the best I can. All right. So before I begin summarizing my report, so I have some acknowledgements to make that I'd like to do today. I know the board meetings are recorded. I have no idea who listens to them afterward. However, I want those that do to know how much I appreciate the staff here at this library. They are amazing. The last few days have been nothing less than a challenge between the heating system because it was freezing cold in here, then it was really hot in here, and you're lucky because I've been able to cool it down in here today because we thought we were going to be sitting in a sauna. And our newly installed key fob security system has been a challenge. They've been willing to go the extra mile, and what they didn't realize is that it meant that they would have to come dressed in numerous layers, long johns, wool socks, boots, coats, mittens, hats, etc., with one goal in mind: to provide exceptional service to our community members. So thank you very much. And to the board and to the community. We thank you for your continued support. Given the issues that we were having with our heating system and the rather cold temperatures in the building, I believe our decision to close the library on Saturday, while it was a difficult one, was the right thing to do with the weather that we were possibly going to get, etc. I know this because just the other day, I was in another area of business, doing some business of my own, and they were sympathetic to the fact that the temps were rather low in our building, and they joked that I came there to warm up for the day. So it's obvious that the word gets around town about the library, as patrons stop from here and there, and they made comments about how chilly it was. We appreciate their understanding, and we are looking forward to a fantastic 2024. So that was my.
Is the heat,
It was just.
yeah, but is it solvable?
Yes.
Okay.
It just took a lot of work from Nick working with Complete Control,
Yeah.
and so, yeah.
That's,
Yeah. And this cold frigid temperatures that we all of a sudden got just
oh, yeah.
did kind of,
Extreme, it's an
Yeah.
extreme. you know.
yeah. The boilers were at their max. They didn't like it for a while, so.
Yep.
I highlighted some of the events that are coming up. By the way, that the watercolor class is something that we have a lot of people very interested in, and we have a waiting list for that. So every time we have that one going, we have people involved. That Real Writers Group, again, it's kind of, you're talking about that social thing, and we have a volunteer outside of the library that basically takes care of facilitating that, and that's been popular. And we do the advertising for it, but it is pretty much a self-run program. Again, we're talking about the outreach. We are now doing this story time for adults for the adult centers in the area. Again, if I were to do a survey, I would make sure that I would include that demographic in those surveys. And then we have some of the things going on with the ADRC, and of course we always have our movie that people come and watch. And then we have Judicare that is going to do some legal thing. While they no longer will do the tax question help type thing, They are still willing to come in and do some answers for, individuals that are of a legal nature. We have a community read, one that we have not had for quite some time, and it is being led through the Building Merrill Together, through the Merrill AAC, and it's going to be focused on volunteerism, and that is what the book is focused on. WVLS, there's nothing to report either from the representative or from their board at this time. Nothing to report from the Friends because they have all these people that like to go south, so they are postponing meetings till March. Our staff development day on Monday, while it was chilly in here, we had team building activities that kept them moving, so we stayed warm, and we did some really cool things. We also talked about the Libby app. That is something that people call us about all of the time. So we needed our staff to better understand, how it operates, how to troubleshoot, and the steps to take to do that. So we had somebody taking care of that for us. And thank you to the library board for allowing us to have those staff development days. Strategic plan, as I said, I have now gone over the report with you, and now we will continue and we will look at our goals and objectives. Both Andrea, Maria, and I will work on that and provide that to you at our April meeting. Okay. Busy time of the year, doing, closing out a lot of different things. We will have our annual report from DPI that becomes live on Friday, and then we will need to have that approved by WVLS before I can come to the board, and then I will need your final approval at our February meeting because the following day is when it is due with the state. So we are still continuing to work on that NICE project, that whole consolidation of the two library systems. There are a lot of subcommittees meeting right now, just the feasibility of all of the steps and all of the processes that need to change. And just my last note, just to save the date, Saturday, February 24th at 5, we have a staff gathering and a board member gathering, and I believe I sent out an email about that, so let me know if you're interested, and that's what I got.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Thank you, and I have nothing to add, as usual. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Awesome move.
Second.
Motion made, second to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming.